All right, hello everyone. Welcome to the Emerging HR Professionals group page. So we have a conversation today with Megan Hightower, and we are going to be having a conversation about scaling HR and working within global teams, which is something that a lot of companies are working with now. I mean, this is becoming more and more of a conversation as companies are scaling and becoming more global as well. So Megan, welcome. Glad to have you here.
Thanks. I'm excited to be here and really excited that this group exists for emerging professionals out there in the global world.
Absolutely. Yeah, it's a lot of good conversation. I'm curious for the people that are coming in, tell me a little bit about yourself and your background in HR. How do you get to where you are today?
Sure. So starting off, I actually worked more years than I care to admit in like restaurant industry and customer service. But I think that's important because you really learn to like bring that with you. You never really want to tell somebody, no, I can't do that. You try to like solve problems, right? And be supportive. But then I started off working at a nonprofit in Las Vegas, and amazing people, great opportunity to learn how to just kind of like, dive right into the fire. And we had paperwork between 15 different locations floating around. And so it's like, okay, now how do we figure out how to systematize this, right? Like this is and I had just been starting out, right? So I'm doing all of the filing and paperwork, and it's like, no, there's got to be a better way. So we, incorporated and implemented some new software that helped us do, electronic documentation and storage and filing, and realizing like, okay, we only need half as many people to do this now, right? Like that's, and, now we can really focus on the transformational and move away from the transactional. So I think that's really important. And, a lot of, obviously HR, we've got a lot of that, just busy work and stuff that we've got to get done, right? So just finding opportunities, I think is where I've really enjoyed and kind of been my wheelhouse to help develop, an infrastructure to grow and scale. And it's been a lot of fun.
That's amazing. And one thing that you kind of alluded to that I've noticed within some of the companies that we work with is as you systematize things and as you actually build these processes and the infrastructure, it's only then that you can start having the conversation of how do we make this customer experience better? How do we make, so that's whenever you can focus more on the strategy side and on that customer facing side. Because if there's no process, you're just trying to keep your head above water.
Yeah, you can get to the fun stuff.
You don't have time for the fun. We're just trying to process this paperwork. But after you have that, then you have the bandwidth to actually look at strategy and overall improvement. So it's
absolutely
really holistic improvement.
Yeah.
So you said that we're doing that in Vegas. You're in Kansas City now.
I am in Kansas City. Yeah. So
You're
I've moved around quite a bit. I was in Cleveland, Ohio before this, but Kansas City is my home. And had children, and it was like, all the guilt was felt, keeping the grandkids away from my family. So my family's here. We're back in Kansas City for the last several years now. But prior to COVID, even had the opportunity to move to Kansas City while I was still working, and had a remote environment there. So I've been doing kind of the virtual before, it all became necessary and a requirement.
So before it was cool.
Yeah. And then, we had at that organization, it was a student travel organization, and operations in over 20 countries. And so with folks working virtually, traveling all the time, it's like, how do we keep, that feel of connectivity and, preserve the culture, when folks don't see one another, different personality types, like, some of us can go, weeks and go, okay, I'm great working from home all day long. And then you've got other folks that are like, I am going to lose my mind if I don't see somebody or talk to somebody face to face. And so you've got to figure out how to make sure folks stay connected and manage those different styles. So
tell me more about that. What were some things that you did to have that feeling of remote culture?
Yeah. Well, and one of the things that I guess is always in the back of my mind, probably rooted in the nonprofit, but never had, worked for like, billion-dollar enterprise kind of company. And so always wanting to be like cost conscious. And so I think there are ways to do that and still, maintain, a path that the team really appreciates. And so like, honestly, for me, it's the engagement surveys. That's the guiding light year over year. Because you've got it, broken down into buckets, right? Like, so you get to see, okay, compensation is really important to me right now, or I don't feel connected to my team. I don't feel valued. I don't feel, part of the culture. And if you've got, a headquarter in one country and not in, others, do they feel like they're, as valued and a part of the team, and do they have the same level of like, it's not going to be the same benefits, obviously, but do they feel like they're just as much part of the team, right? And do they have all those cool fun perks and things like that? So it's, those engagement surveys really do help say, people don't expect you to fix things overnight, right? So you can develop, all right, we're looking at the cost of the program. Here's the top one thing people want, career development, or they want learning, or they want rewards and recognition, right? So you can kind of go down that line and, all right, here's our target. Here's what we can budget for right now. And this is going to be our highest impact. And then involve the team in that process. So now you're getting buy-in, but you're also like, pulling people in from all over, the world and different teams and different levels throughout the organization to make sure that everybody's represented and that everybody has a voice. So that's usually a great way to get buy-in. And then now you've got them championing, any of your programs going forward and being a support. So kind of a win-win-win.
Several follow-up questions from this that I'm thinking of. So as you're using your engagement surveys, you gave some specific examples of data points that you're collecting. What are some of the major data points that you look for in your engagement surveys? And have you seen, or what trends have you seen in the adjustment for engagement requests or engagement demands, especially over the last couple of years? Those employee demands have been evolving as this workplace has been evolving.
Yeah, well, I appreciate seeing, certainly just to answer that last one first, I appreciate seeing the kind of destigmatism and, acknowledgement of mental health in the workplace and how do we support people. And, it's okay to raise your hand and say, I need to check out for a minute, or I need some help, or, not having my best day. Right. And people have personal things going on, right? Like you're spent 6 months in your home, working, and everything else that was going on. And it's a lot, and it still is. And even before that, so I really appreciate that trend, and you're starting to see on LinkedIn, like people are being vocal about it and that need. So that's certainly, I think, one of the things that I didn't see prior, as specifically requested as the other. But I look at like, the entire employee experience, I think are really, what you want to ask questions around. And how do you feel like your benefits, your compensation, do you feel supported by your team? What's the collaboration like? Management surveys are really valuable. And I really like being able to make surveys anonymous, but really appreciate when I've found some tools that help be able to break it down by department, because I think that tells a big story too, right? And sometimes there's easy fixes. Sometimes there's just like, oh, we didn't realize that. And it costs nothing to, to make a switch or to say, okay, let's give this person some extra, just development in this area. And so sometimes there are really, really easy fixes. and easy wins. And I think that's one thing to always keep an eye out for. And, the comment section. So always have the comment section there. But, a lot of times with anonymous surveys, it's tough because you go, okay, well, if you put their department and there's one person working in a department, right, you can't like really be anonymous. So I've used tools in the past that like fortunately had the capability. And I think you can do this with like, different survey tools out there, like probably some ways to customize it. But, where it's like, if there weren't at least 3 respondents, then you need to bucket it together. So maybe the HR team is small and the accounting team is small. So, okay, now I can group those 2 together and kind of make it like admin, right? But I've still got good content with sales and our, how are we doing here? And same with ENPS scores. So like the engagement surveys are a little bit more, but like net promoter score is an easy run, good, even if it's a quarterly pulse, just to say like, how are we feeling? Take your temperature. And then you can break that down by department too, and just kind of make sure we're like continuously headed in the right direction.
Yeah. You don't want to wrap the whole body when you just have a stub toe, right?
Right, exactly.
Identify, oh, this is specifically where that pain point is. It's good. Yeah, that's awesome on some specific data points that we can collect and being strategic. And I want to kind of continue moving forward. You were talking about that, the mental health side, the employee wellness. I mean, just overall wellness as being a major conversation point. What are some action steps that you've been seeing companies make in response to that request from employees?
Yeah, I mean, EAPs have always been there, right? But I've always said like these are like one of the most underutilized, things. So I'm seeing it like a good modernization and kind of those kind of tools now evolving, where it's a little bit more front of mind. It's a little bit more like modern, and maybe there's an app and you can make like it's immediately accessible. You don't need to call, and I think that meeting people where they're at, those kind of tools that do that and make it accessible are really important. And I think it's, again, just like bringing the conversation forward so that, I mean, at the end of the day, when you're using a service that's that's sponsored by the employer, it's like, okay, are they going to see this? Of course they're not. We know that, but some folks might have some trepidation. And so really building that confidence that like, this is, these are the tools that are here for you. We want you to utilize them. And, I mean, it's kind of like an unlimited vacation policy, right? Like if you don't build the infrastructure for them to actually, leverage it, it's like, it doesn't work, right? Like if they're doing 3 people's jobs at once all year long, it doesn't do a lot of good. So, making sure that people like that they actually can, take that time for themselves and do, what needs to be done. I guess just kind of like crossing the T's and dotting the I's is important there as well.
Yeah. There's nothing like you can take a week off. You just need to do 2 weeks of work beforehand.
Right. And as soon as you get back,
it's going to be a mess. Right. I want to clarify for some of the people tuning in. So EAP is your employee assistance program. And that's something that, I mean, from what I've seen, a lot of organizations, they have their EAPs, but employees don't know about them. So we'll have people call and say, okay, I'm going through this family emergency, going through the situation, and have no idea that there is an assistance program and there is infrastructure already in place. So letting people know, you can have these great programs, and if no one knows about it, it's not going to do a lot of good.
Absolutely. Like post it, clearly somewhere on whatever boards you're using.
So I want to expand this conversation. So this is working with different teams as we're scaling them, building that infrastructure. Tell me a bit about scaling on a global level and on an international level. That's going to be different feedback, different accommodations, different infrastructure that you're building. Tell me a bit about that process of scaling globally and what your thought process is during that time.
Yeah. And again, like I haven't worked for the companies where it's like we've got entities established in every country already, right?
Right.
And these full operations. And so you kind of have to be a little bit like scrappy and it's fun. It's good. It's a good thing. But learn to like really partner with your local management teams and know that like my way of you know, thinking that we should, you know, be doing this is not necessarily going to be successful here. It's not necessarily the right way. Sometimes I find things that work a lot better. And I'm like, okay, we're going to bring that over here now into our processes. But it's really a collaborative, just like everything, a collaborative process with management and understanding, like knowing your people, getting to know people. I think that that's one of the best things you can do for any kind of aspect or facet of HR or just in general, like, you know, being a successful professional is having and building strong relationships with folks, knowing like you've got their back, you know, you can trust one another. You're there to kind of give them the tools and resources that they need to be successful. I think that's a great place to start. And instead of like, okay, oh my gosh, you guys do it that way, or, oh no, that doesn't, you know, I can't believe you didn't tell us this was going on for, you know, 2 years. And now we got to deal with like, it's just this, it's not productive, right? So we focus on the solution. And then, you know, maybe later if we need to work through some things or, you know, discuss like, all right, moving forward, here's how we would do something. But what I would say in terms of like scaling globally is understanding really where you want to centralize so that you can have access to data. And when you quickly need to like run a report, or you want to make sure you can, you know, if you've got systems that are integrated with your performance management solutions or, you know, rewards and recognition tools, those ideally would be global. And so that's one of the things just starting out, understanding, all right, what's the 5-year plan for my organization, right? If you know that like they're looking at markets, you know, in Europe or Asia, are the tools that you're implementing going to be able to scale with you guys and facilitate that, like, you know, different languages, can you put in different currencies, things like that. So understanding like where you can centralize and making sure that the systems that you're selecting will hook up to those, you know, centralized systems, and you've got solutions that'll, you know, fit a variety. If you're doing learning management, what are the different modalities that people need and that they like? You know, learners look different just everywhere. And so what are the different learning styles? What are the different, how do people like to be rewarded and recognized? What are some cool things you can do locally? So centralized, but always, you know, acknowledge that folks like things, you know, differently. And like, if you see the manager going, no, this is the way we're going to do things, and like, we've always done it, and like, they are determined to like, this is really important to me and my team. Great. Let's, you know, I'm not going to fight you on any of that. Like, we'll come together where we can. I'm not here to take over anything. We just want to work together and, you know, come up with some solid processes.
Megan, that's so powerful. What you're saying, it's essentially establishing handrails where you can have some movement, but we're not going to go beyond these two handrails or two bumpers that we're going in. So creating those standards. I'm thinking to our company as we scale globally and have team members all over. A few specific examples that I'm thinking of is having that central language that we use in terms of, time zones, money, right? So there's specific things that we use within our company that are central, but as we're speaking to different clients, we know how to adjust that and adjust those styles of interaction as well.
Yeah, and actually, as you were mentioning that, it just I remembered that one of the things that we used to do was have our meetings at different times, right? Like, it's if you've got somebody in Australia, you know, and then West Coast, all over the globe, then there's never going to be the perfect convenient time for everybody, right? You've got some folks waking up at 5 a.m. So make sure it's not your headquartered that is always getting those like wonderful times. And then you've got, other locations that every single time they're the ones that are, up until 2 a.m. on a call, right? Like, try to really make it equitable. And that's where those surveys, you can build that trust and get that feedback, right? Because you might not even realize, like, oh, these are some pain points.
These are some pain points. Exactly. Yeah, that's so powerful in recognizing what those standards are going to be and how to adjust. I'm thinking of Disney as they went to, I believe it was Shanghai, and their motto was, "We will be authentically Disney and distinctly Chinese." Or yeah, it was Chinese,
I
and that's
love
such
that.
a powerful motto. Yeah.
Yeah. I read a term, I'm going to butcher it. But like glocalize, so like global, think of things as like globally, but also locally. And so I thought that was like interesting. I just happened to stumble upon it yesterday.
Oh, I like that. I've never heard of that. Okay.
Local,
All right.
yeah.
That'll be the new hashtag, localize. That sounds like a cool like soft drink or something.
Right.
Local. That's awesome. So tell me, I want to go a bit further. As teams are preparing to become more global, we're seeing more organizations make that shift from work from home to work from anywhere, to now people are working everywhere. So it's no longer everyone in Kansas City working at home. It's people all over the country and all over the world that are working. What are some considerations that organizations should be making as they're going global for the first time, or even going regionally more diverse for the first time? What are some major considerations that they need to be taken into account?
I mean, the front of mind, most exciting stuff is always, even when you're expanding into different states, if you're US based, each state has different payroll, different, legal regulations. And if you've got folks like salespeople that are traveling, regularly, you kind of have to look at that and understand, if they're hourly traveling, or, what are those time and labor. So it always starts with compliance, right? And I think as you're scaling globally, that doesn't change. You want to take a look at what are the requirements. Are we going to need to establish an entity here if we are hiring? And there are definitely solutions around that, because that's expensive. And if you just want one person working remotely, that's not always the solution. So there are some countries where you can set up just a payroll entity registration. And then if you get a payroll company that can, and that's another, like, now you've got to source international payroll companies. And so, and then are you comfortable managing the, like, those payroll companies would obviously fund, those statutory funds for you, but outside of that, managing the HR, if somebody's, if you have a termination or, offer letters, those are all things that you want to be prepared with and understand what those rules are. And especially like EU privacy, that is a big one. Like, if you're going into an investigation, not the first thing we think of here in the US is like, what are their privacy rights? We are like, we're going to get the information and protect the company. So just kind of like, it's just all of these really, kind of varied, there's a lot of the same foundational kind of concepts. So you always kind of have that understanding, but things vary a lot. And so making sure that you're tapping into some expertise, and you can go on like a lot of the employer of record solutions out there, which basically means if you don't have an entity established, right, and you can't find a legal way to pay somebody, and you don't want to do, independent contractor rules, as I've always understood, kind of are pretty similar, globally, right? Like, we all understand that what constitutes a contractor versus an employee, and we want to be conscientious of that. And so if they truly should be an employee versus an independent contractor, then take a look at some of the solutions out there that are offering like an employer of record or a POE. And so those will help make sure that you stay in compliance. It's a little bit pricier, but you'll definitely worth it.
Yeah.
To have that expertise to lean on. I mean, they're basically going to act as the employer. You still get, they're still fully integrated into your team, but you've got them managing payroll, they're managing, benefits, all of those things that are really, it's a beast to source just, locally sometimes. And so, you think even one other country, like it's,
We can get, yeah.
yeah.
That's such a, I think that conceptually, whenever people first started going from work from home to work from anywhere, there were a lot of these considerations logistically that may not have been taken into account. Yeah, for the examples that you gave of
Taxes.
Are we going to be geographically agnostic in our compensation? Is our healthcare, we have examples of people that moved away and all of their healthcare providers are now out of network because they're on the other side of the country. And so how are we going to handle that? And you have the conversation of if someone's on vacation and then they get hurt, but they're technically online, was that workers' comp? How are we handling that situation? And so there's a lot of logistical conversations that, that are really important to have as you're going to that work from anywhere.
Yeah, you made an excellent point. I mean, I think being proactive in all of those areas is a necessity, something you definitely want to suss out in advance, right?
Yeah, not the most fun, but definitely critical.
Yeah. And, along those lines, if you do have, team members that are traveling abroad or regularly or living somewhere else, you can look at different like expat policies. You can look at travel insurance, make sure you've got like the global liabilities policies. So, you're covered, your people are covered and that they know how to access it, right? Like if they have a tummy ache in the middle of the night and again, their home residence insurance doesn't work. What do? How do they get care?
So I see that Shima has joined us. I want to acknowledge, so say hello. You're more than welcome to hop in with any questions that you have or join in the conversation. Or if you want to just listen, then that's okay too. So I want to kind of shift here. We've gone very broad and okay, these are some policies, some questions we should ask, how we can apply this locally and as we begin to scale. If I am a person that is new to HR, I'm coming into this profession, what insights, what advice would you give to a new HR professional that really wants to make a splash in this industry?
Yeah. I would say, first of all, like a lot of times we've studied, we've taken, exams, we're involved in resource groups, in peer groups like you guys offer. And so like, a lot more than you probably think you do. So believe in yourself, first of all, that you belong there and, and know that we've all got different skill sets. So I don't care if somebody has 25 years in HR, or, 5 months, right? Like, we're all going to bring different skill sets to the table, and that's a great thing, right? So, different perspectives, different viewpoints, and I'm not solid in a lot of the areas that a lot of HR professionals are, have a lot more experience than I do in some areas. And then I know like, okay, but I can bring, my skills. I know, where I'm effective. And so I think that's really important. And just knowing like, for me, employee relations was one that it was always like this purple unicorn that you can't get access to because it's confidential, right? You keep that stuff confidential, investigations. It's a need to know basis only. And so it's like, how do you gain experience if you're kind of on the outside of that? And so that was one of the things that I always was like, as I got thrown into it, I'm like, oh my gosh, can I actually do this? Yes, you absolutely can. And it's all about just being authentic with people, working with managers. And it's okay to say, I don't have the answer right now. I don't know. Let me find out. You're never going to have all the answers. And and that's okay.
I love that. I love that response so much. Because it's a big question of, yeah, the HR is a very, very complex and growing in complexity, very complex industry. And I want to ask a follow-up. You gave an example of employee relations being something that you didn't have a lot of experience in. How did you find that pathway to get into employee relations?
Yeah.
Yeah, what was that experience like?
First, I mean, be open with your managers, right? Like that's one of the things, they can't read your mind and know, hey, I'm interested in this. So be open with your managers and do some, go to some different seminars where that's the, specific speciality. And I think, eventually they're going to want to train and develop folks to have other people that can manage. And so I think, certainly starting with like shadowing or things like that are awesome to just, I would never have an issue saying like, oh, we've got, somebody else that's going to be here as a witness or, and it's not awkward or anything like that at all to have somebody else there supporting, taking notes, asking, questions that we miss. So just, don't be afraid to ask for some exposure there. And I kind of got thrown into it, and so was very, very nervous and like, all right, I'm off the heels of somebody that was doing this for 20 years, or the manager is going to notice that I don't have the same experience, obviously, and know right out of the gate. But at the end of the day, it's just, when you partner up with management, there's not an HR person dictating, hey, here's what we're going to do and how we're going to do it. You work together. All right, here are the next steps. Here's what we think, how we think we should handle this situation, and, conflict, and just work together. And that's where it's helpful just to build great relationships and great rapport and just be there to solve people's problems. And I don't think you'll ever lose with that kind of mentality, bring the positivity and the positive energy and walk the walk when it comes, to being just a solid worker and a good team player.
That's the exciting thing about human resources is we are people. So wanting to build one another up is really a critical part of the industry. And I love how simple that you said, just ask. So you want to get involved in a certain aspect of human resources. There are resources available and people willing to help out.
Yeah, and mentorships.
Yeah, people are eager to mentor others. I speak to a lot of seasoned HR professionals, and there is an eagerness of, a lot of what and I'm sure you see this too, a lot of what we do within our organization is address the challenges that were created from poor HR practices or poor people practices. And if we can be proactive and equip people coming into the industry that are in the industry currently to have those better people practices, we really can transform organizations and communities.
Absolutely.
So I'm curious, just a couple questions more. I'm curious, what is next for you? What are you looking forward to? What are you looking forward to?
So I am looking forward to really, continuing to grow, and, identify the areas where I still, can improve and kind of, refine the craft. But I love global HR. I love meeting, so many wonderful people all around the world. I love that, no 2 days are the same, and I don't care what kind of HR you're in, it's what area, that's probably the case. But I'm ready to really kind of work on my path with optimizing processes and helping organizations get to the place where, all right, now we can focus on the transformational. Now we can start looking at the employee experience and have that time to carve out. And I think, I enjoy supporting problem solving. And so I think just being able to really now with my business Pops Enabled, just kind of stay in the space that I really love is exciting.
Now, we've alluded to business pops a couple of times, but give some context of what that is and what you're doing with that organization.
Yeah, so POPs enabled. I don't know if you've probably seen like POPs, people ops, people operations, kind of the new term that's been coined. Certainly like people ops you see in job descriptions all the time. And so I see that as kind of like the more, technical and full suite, right? So there is no copy and paste solution or software for every single company out there. Every team is different, every culture is different, and every need is unique. And finding ways to align processes, policies, employee, whether it's engagement or just any kind of initiative. How can we do that based on the budget? So I like supporting startups, as I mentioned, and SMBs or in growth mode. So basically just taking things off of the current team. If they have HR in-house, awesome. What can I take off your plate to help get you over this like hurdle of the all of the head kind of trying to keep your head afloat, right? Which we know is prevalent. And so just really enjoy those kind of opportunities to create impact and be creative with solutions. So right, like when I was working with the travel organization, they had all of these vintage t-shirts. And so when we were coming up with our rewards and recognition program, like they're just old in a warehouse, nothing, they didn't sell from, the clients, things like that. And so we started, just as a reward, we'd put these t-shirts up and it cost absolutely nothing. We had rewards that were like Patagonia bags or, and they were like, nope, I want this t-shirt. I want this vintage t-shirt. Like everybody loved the t-shirts. Right. And so it was awesome. And you can get right. Like in some of the countries, the general managers would have relationships with different resorts. And so we couldn't have that in the US, but their team had like a resort day for 4 or for their families as one of the rewards. And so that's where you get like creative and have some fun. And then, working with the CBD manufacturing company, we had, obviously you don't have that same like plug and play, right? But we were talking about wellness and, not a huge budget to, bring in another like third party kind of giant that does, offers that full suite of things, right? But like what aligns with the organization's vision and mission and strategy, and how can you like infuse all of that into your company culture and really get people aligning and on board with that vision and excited about it? And so one of the things we did was we had like there was a farm really close to the manufacturing center that the business owned, and they were doing some like R&D, growing things like that of plants. But they had like a team there of awesome, great like horticulture and farm and things like that. And so they planted a community garden. And so the team would go there and help with that. And then they would bring like, all right, zucchini. And then everybody would post on Slack, like pictures of their, grilling zucchini and things like that, or whatever the yield was for that week that they would be dropping off. So just different fun things that you can do to, that, again, it doesn't have to cost a lot of money. There are ways to just get people like, excited about being there and increase the energy.
So what fun ways of engagement, especially with a dispersed team, being able to bring people together. Yeah. It's really, really powerful.
Yeah.
You alluded to your vision and your mission being a source of inspiration for some of that engagement. What are some other places where you found inspiration for engagement initiatives within your teams?
That's a good question. A lot of times it's, again, just knowing knowing the people, right? And talking to them, and when you ask, they'll tell you exactly what they want to be happy and satisfied and feel, valued and love their work, right? And to stay. And so that is just being open to, people provide feedback, and sometimes it's critical. And honestly, I like the critical stuff too, right? Because it's like, hadn't thought of that, didn't know that. So being open to it. And again, when people see that you're actively, taking steps to improve, they know we're not going to have, 401k, career pathing, comp assessment, all of these things aren't going to happen overnight, but they see you incrementally working for it, they'll start giving you more feedback like, oh, what about this? And so a lot of times, like the awesome creative ideas come from just connecting, with the team and hearing their feedback.
I'm reminded of a conversation that actually happened this week in our quarterly review. We were talking about ways to improve our culture, and someone said, we don't use our random channel as much in our Slack. I think we could include more like that. That was a request.
Yeah.
We should include more, fun anecdotes. We do that every once in a while.
Yeah.
Every couple of weeks. Let's do that more.
All day.
This is such a small thing, and we can do this more, right? So sometimes it's really these small incremental changes that we can implement over time that make a big difference.
100%.
That's awesome. Well, I want to, I know we have just a couple minutes left. I want to give an opportunity to any of the guests that are here. If they have any specific questions for Megan, we're going to contact. 3, 2, 1. Okay. So Megan, I want to thank you so much for taking the time out of your day to talk with me, talk with the group. On a personal note, it was great to see you again. We haven't talked in a while, so I feel like I'm just connecting with an old friend. If someone has any follow-up questions, they want to work in global teams, they want to work within scaling teams, as they are on their HR journey, what's going to be the best way that they can get in contact with you?
I'm available, LinkedIn. Let's connect all day long. And I'll be following your group certainly and learning from you guys. Again, just HR is a great, a supportive community. And so we'll lean on each other, learn from each other, and happy to share any resources I have or, anecdotes, that I've gained. And I'll look forward to, following you guys. I'm really excited and really appreciate you having me here.
Perfect. Well, thank you so much. I hope that you have a good rest of your, what's today? Today's Thursday. I hope you have a good rest of your Thursday. Oh, I see that we have Erica has hopped in last minute. Nice to see you with us. So friends, if you have any follow-up questions, please feel free to reach out to Megan, reach out to us, and we'll be a resource, right? It's taking that human resources and flipping it, being a resource to the humans within our team.
Love it.
Thank you. Hope you have a good rest.
Thank you so much. All right. Nice seeing you. Take care. Bye, everyone.